Hey everybody, Notorious here. Welcome back to my channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about basal anchors, specifically simple basal anchors. Anchors that are easy to tie, easy to learn, easy to remember. This is going to be episode 1 of a 2-part series where the second episode is going to cover more complex and more sophisticated anchors, so keep an eye out for that. Now, first thing first, in order to get your line up in the tree, you need to use a throw line and a throw weight, and you need to get over a suitable tie-in point. But the beauty of a basal anchor is that, unlike with a canopy anchor, you don't have to isolate a limb. You can go over multiple limbs if you want. So that makes it a little more convenient, a little faster, and it requires a little less effort and accuracy. Once the weight falls to the other side, you remove the weight, you tie the throw line, the end of the throw line to the end of your rope, and then you pull it over everything that you launch the weight over, and you end up with something that looks like this. Here is the end of my rope that I pulled over, and then this is the other end, which I have most of it coiled in a bag that's out of frame. You use SRT or SRS, which is single rope or stationary rope technique or systems, to ascend this leg of the line, and this is the end that you will secure to the base of the tree. So as far as simple anchors go, there probably isn't one more simple than the running bowline. The beauty of the running bowline is that it's really easy and it doesn't require anything but your rope. You don't need any additional hardware. So let me demonstrate the running bowline, which is simply the bowline loop knot, which if you don't know how to tie, you should learn because it's easily the most popular knot in the world because of its ease of tying and its overall security. The running bowline is simply the bowline loop knot, where the loop is fixed around the standing end or the resulting standing end of the line after it's been brought around the tree. So let me demonstrate that. So make sure you have enough slack, and you're going to go around. And just to get some terminology out of the way, when you've brought the rope around to the other side, the way I just did, this part of the system is called the working end. And this part here is known as the standing end. And so when I say that a running bowline is simply a bowline tied around the standing end, it's as simple as tying a bowline with the loop going around the standing end. Okay, so now I've got a running bowline. Now, you're not quite done yet, because one important thing to keep in mind when tying a bowline, if it's going to be used for life support, meaning if it's going to be used to hold a climber, then you need to use a secure version of, also known as a inherently secure version of the bowline. And there are multiple ways you can secure a bowline, and all of them simply involve a few additional steps. They all involve taking the tail and adding some maneuvers into the bowline to ensure that it doesn't come undone. Because if you were to just climb on the bowline as it is, as this gets cyclically loaded, meaning as the climber tensions and releases tension over and over throughout their climb, this bowline has the potential to come undone. And that could lead to catastrophic failure and serious injury and or death. So some of the inherently secure versions or locked versions of the bowline include the Edwards bowline. The most popular locked form of the bowline is for sure the Yosemite bowline, also known as a bowline with a Yosemite finish. My personal favorite is the Scott's locked bowline. I think it's probably a lot more secure than the Yosemite, but I haven't done any actual testing to verify that claim, so I'm speculating. So I'm going to tie a Scott's locked bowline by simply taking the tail, bring it through the nipping loop, and then up back through the collar parallel with the standing end. In this case, relative to the knot, this would be the standing end and this would be the working end. So in any system, you can have multiple standing and working ends. Now that I've locked this bowline, I can cinch it down, and the next step, it's proper form to apply your weight to the rope before you even start climbing it on the ground to make sure that your tying point is as secure as you hope it will be. You can sometimes look at a nice big limb and think it's a great tying point, but there could be fractures and cracks or rotting on the side that you can't see. So until you're able to visually inspect it when you get to the top, you have to use your skill and experience to make good judgment calls. And as far as what you're going to allow yourself to climb on and anchor yourself from. One benefit is that you don't have to isolate a limb with a basal anchor, but the downside of a basal anchor compared to a canopy anchor is that a canopy anchor, when you climb on it, let's say you weigh 150 pounds, you're only going to be exerting 150 pounds plus any, forces that come about from you moving around on the rope and making dynamic movements and making that fluctuate, a little bit relative to how much you're moving around on the rope. But for the most part, the way you just think about it is a canopy anchor. When you climb on it, you're only going to be exerting as much force as you are. So if you're 150 pounds, you're only going to be exerting 150 pounds of force. If you use a basal anchor, because it goes up over a tie-in point and then back down, if you're 150 pounds and you climb on this leg here, that force is going to travel throughout the entire length of the rope. And on this end, you're going to be exerting 150 pounds, as well as on this end, you will also be exerting 150 pounds. And if you make a lot of movements, or if you happen to fall, you could exert even more force. But the way you think about it is canopy anchors do not multiply forces, but a basal anchor will double the forces, of the climber in the entire system. So you got to make sure when you use a basal anchor that you're going over something that is substantial. The beauty of a basal anchor is that if you don't have, the rule of thumb is typically you want something about the thickness of your thigh. But if you can't do that, you can also go over 2 or more limbs and get the collective strength of all those limbs. Because you don't have to isolate limbs, that works perfectly fine. Another simple method for securing yourself to the base of a tree is with a knot called the figure 8 follow through. This knot, for some perspective, is the same knot that rock climbers will use to connect themselves to their dynamic lines, and it goes directly, the loop goes around their belay loop, and that's how a lot of rock climbers and alpinists and rescuers climb. This knot takes a little bit of practice, but overall, it's definitely much easier than a lot of other options. So what you're going to do is you're going to give yourself enough slack, and then you're going to tie a regular figure eight, like this, like the stopper knot, around the line here, giving yourself enough tail to create a loop and mirror the exact motions that you did to create the original figure eight. So let me demonstrate that. So I'm going to tie a figure eight, and that's what that looks like. And now I'm just going to go around the standing end and create a loop. And then I'm going to go in exactly where it comes out. And I'm going to retrace this pattern until it comes out where this goes in. While doing this, you have to be mindful that you need to maintain, you want your traced part of the line to be as parallel and neatly going along the edges of the original figure eight as possible. Oops. So there you have it. I've now, let me just organize everything. I've now created a figure eight follow through. When you finish this knot, you want to pull every strand combination to tighten it. So for example, I'm going to pull this part here and this part and this part. So boom, boom. And then I'm going to pull this part and then this part and then this part. Now this resulting knot does not need to be locked like the bowline. It is already secure enough to climb on. So that's the figure eight follow through. Let's see what's next. This next anchor is probably one of my favorites as far as the simple anchors are concerned, and I'll show you why. I don't know what it's called, but I know how to tie it. So this next anchor is probably one of my favorites, and let me show you why. First thing you're going to do is give yourself a little more tail on this side than you did for the other anchors, and you're going to tie a regular bowline, not a lock bowline, but a regular bowline around the standing end in a way that leaves you with a good length of tail at the end. So let me show you what I mean. Tie a bowline with the loop around the standing end. And now I have a running bowline with a long tail. The next step is going to serve as both a form to make this secure enough to climb on by serving as a stopper knot, and something else. Let me show you. So got that cinched down, and then what I'm going to do is on this part here, I'm going to tie a double fisherman's knot. So okay, so make that nice and tight. A double fisherman's knot should have crossover in the front, and then it's parallel in the back. And what this does is, once I cinch this down, I can advance this knot as far as it'll go. And what that'll do is lock it in place. So unlike other anchors that kind of flop around when they're cyclically loaded, this one stays in place the entire time. So that's a huge benefit, and I would definitely recommend this anchor to anyone. And let's see what's next. All of the methods that I've shown you thus far are perfectly safe, perfectly viable methods for securing a basal anchor to the base of a tree. However, all the methods shown thus far incorporate a lot of rope-on-rope friction. And if you don't know what that is, basically when I have this looped around itself, the rope, as it gets tensioned and untensioned, will create a lot of friction at this point here. And over time, this can damage your rope. So in order to prevent this from happening, it's as simple as adding a piece of hardware. Specifically, in this case, a anchor ring. This is an aluminum anchor ring. They also come in steel. This one is 34 millimeters internal diameter. And let me show you how it's done. First, what you're going to do is you slip the ring onto the end of the rope. You bring it around over to the standing end. When a ring is connected to a line like this, it is referred to as a floating arrangement or a floating ring. Once you've got the ring on the standing end, you're going to take the working end and tie a locked form of the bowline, or you can use a figure eight follow through or any secure, inherently secure or locked loop knot. And I'm going to tie the bowline with the loop through the ring. Then I'm going to finish that. And then I'm going to lock it with my favorite, the Scotch lock. And now look at this. You have something effectively identical to the running bowline or figure eight follow through configuration, except there's a very smooth piece of metal in the form of a ring that is connecting each piece of rope. And that means it eliminates the rope on rope friction. So now I'm going to cinch that down, and there you have it. That is safe to climb on. Another piece of hardware that can be used to reduce or eliminate rope on rope friction is known as the notch quickie. This stainless steel U-shaped shackle has a stainless steel slick pin that you push two little buttons to open up. This has a lot of benefits over a ring, which cannot be opened. And let me demonstrate why it's so convenient. This, by the way, along with the ring, can also be used as part of a canopy anchor. So this little piece of hardware, I highly recommend that you own either a ring or a notch quickie. If I had to pick one, I would pick the quickie. Trust me, you're not going to regret it. You're going to use it all the time. Now, to do this anchor, I'm going to tie the same knot as what resulted from the figure eight follow through, but you could also use a bowline if you wanted to, a locked form of the bowline, but I'm just demonstrating with a figure eight on a bite. Now, this is, like I said, the same resulting knot as the figure eight follow through, except it's 10 times easier to tie. See how much faster that was instead of having to retrace my steps and going around and all that. So now what I do is I take the shackle and I put it through the loop, and then I now insert the standing end. After I do that, I can push the pin through and the system is now locked. But I did something to demonstrate an important safety point. Here I have the quickie secured, but there's a problem. I have this end, the side with the pins, pushing against the tree. This is dangerous, and you want to avoid doing this. So if you find that that side of the quickie is getting smashed into the tree, you want to open it up and just rotate it 180 degrees. And now a good rule of thumb is you always want, while it's open, you want this pin to be facing up or in the direction of the trunk. So now I can lock it, and when I cinch it down, the proper side of the quickie is getting, pushed into the tree. The quickie is great because it can be used, particularly in canopy anchors, to easily disconnect the anchor and advance it. Don't do that so much with a Basal anchor, but still you could see how that was a lot more convenient than having to tie a figure-8 follow-through. Probably took half the time. This final anchor is definitely my favorite, and it uses two pieces of hardware, both of which you likely already own. I have a triple locking oval carabiner, and then I have a aluminum anchor ring. What I'm going to do is take the ring and bring it around to the standing end. Now that I've done that, I'm going to tie a secure loop knot. It should be noted that if you have a spliced end or a sewn eye at the end of your rope, you can use that instead of tying a loop. So I'm going to tie a Edwards bowline. I'm going to take the resulting loop and I'm going to pinch it and pass it through the back of the ring. I'm not going to bring it through the front. I'm going to bring it through the back. And now I have it where just the end of the loop is sticking through the ring. And now all I do is I take this carabiner, clip it on, and then now I can cinch this down. This is a great anchor. It's a little more gear intensive, but like I said, it's not using anything expensive or rare or hard to get, and it incorporates pieces of hardware that you're already going to want to own if you're tree climbing. Now, once again, where it has the loop going through, if you have a spliced end or a sewn end, or a sewn eye rather, you can just stick the eye through and then clip it on. That'll be actually stronger than using a knot because all knots inherently reduce the strength of any rope by around 50% or more. And when you have a splice or a sewn eye, it's going to be closer to around 80 or 90% strength. So substantially stronger, but don't worry, you're not going to break this system. It's still got, tons and tons of strength, more than you're ever going to need. And what's great about this system is that just like the running bowline with the long tail and the double fisherman stopper, this also stays in place. So with the cyclic loading, it's not going to move around a lot, which is ideal. I love anchors like this because they make me feel a lot safer. An added benefit of this system is that in an emergency, if there were an injured climber suspended from this end of the rope, if they're full body weight on it, you could feasibly work this carabiner out, work it, and then once you get to the end, you can pull it out, and then the anchor will come undone. And if you're using some kind of second rope for a lowering system, that can be a huge benefit. But wait, before you go, I have one last important safety message. Anytime you climb with any of the systems or basal anchor setups that I've shown in this video, any of them, you must tie an Alpine Butterfly above the anchor. Why? Because this will be the difference between you having a system that allows for someone to rescue you or not, in most cases. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick an anchor from this video, you're going to tie it and complete it, and when you're done, you're going to pull this leg of line down so you have a little bit of slack, and then you're going to tie an Alpine Butterfly. If you don't know how to tie an Alpine Butterfly, I will link in my description some of the videos that I have showing how that's done. It's a very easy to tie, easy to learn, easy to remember midline knot. And what I mean by midline is that you can tie it in the middle without one of the ends of the rope. And it is omnidirectional, meaning that you can load it in any direction. So it's a great knot. It's also, it doesn't jam very easily. So when you're done using the rope, it's easy to untie for the most part. So once you've gotten your Alpine Butterfly in the rope, you're good to climb. Now, how would someone rescue another person using that Alpine Butterfly? Well, let me show you one of the most popular methods for doing this. This technique is going to be a little advanced if you're a beginner, but it's worth learning how to do. It incorporates a basic doubled rope setup, a hitch climber setup. Let me show you. So you're going to have always with your team a rope for emergencies. This rope is going to be, it's going to have to be at least 2 to 3 times the distance between the ground and wherever the climber is. So take that distance, multiply it by 2, ideally 3. I mean, 3 is really ideal because if you do 2, you're going to be literally at the end of your rope by the time the climber reaches the ground. So you want to do 3 times the distance between the ground and the climber. And then you're going to, on one end, you're going to just put a carabiner. And then you're going to install a friction hitch using a hitch cord. You can use any friction hitch that you want, just so long as it isn't something like, it's got to be a climbing hitch, not something like a 6-coil prusik, which would not be ideal. It might work, but you want to use something where the legs come out like this, not on the side. After you've installed and tied the hitch, you're going to use a hitch climber pulley, and this pulley has 3 connection ports or holes, and I'll show you why that's helpful in a second. And then you're going to connect everything together with a carabiner. When you go to actually rescue someone, here's how you do it. Firstly, you're going to need a carabiner with a pulley. You can use a rigging pulley or a slack tending pulley. doesn't matter, but you need a pulley. So you take the pulley and you connect it to the Alpine Butterfly. And then the next step is to use your doubled rope setup. This is called a Hitch Climber setup. And I don't have a harness on, but this here is going to mimic a harness. So I'm going to take this end and I'm going to connect it to my harness. And the next step is to take the rope and put it through the pulley. So here we go. I've got it wrapped through the pulley. Close that up. And then now I take this end and I'm going to connect it to either the hole here or the hole here. It really doesn't matter. So once I've done that, I take up all the slack and I use my full body weight to pull this leg of line and the climber. Well, this goes down and the climber will go up a little bit. So what you're doing is alleviating the tension in this line, or this part of the line here. And that will allow you to disconnect the anchor. So I'm going to put my body weight in it. Now I'm holding the climber with my harness. I'm only going to experience roughly 50% of the climber's weight or less due to friction, because it's, going over a limb. And so sometimes even multiple limbs. And at this point, you or a team member can disconnect the anchor and at that point, all there is left to do is lower the climber to the ground using this friction hitch. And all you're going to do is take your forefinger and thumb and depress the top of the hitch very lightly, and that will, it will lower the climber. It's hard to do because of the friction on the limb, but with a person's body weight, it would move very easily. So you would just lower them to the ground like that. And the beauty of this system is that if you were to lose control, all you have to do, oh, that was the problem. So yeah, you lower them like that. Okay. And the beauty, as I said, is if you were to let go, this hitch would grab immediately and the climber would be held in place. Okay. So I just wanted to show that to you real quick. It's a little more advanced, but it's worth learning how to do. The major takeaway from this is that even if you don't know how to rescue yourself, it is absolutely paramount that for every basal anchor that you tie, you have that Alpine Butterfly a few feet above where the anchor wraps around. This could allow, if you're by yourself and you need to call 911, this knot could be the difference between the fire department being able to lower you or not. So don't forget the Alpine Butterfly. I forgot to include it in the clips earlier, but I'm making this segment to stress the importance of it, so don't forget it. So that about does it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and check out my channel for more hitch how-tos, knot tutorials, and climbing videos. Bye.